This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cali Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Another nor'easter my way. Spring kicks in, and Cylinder season continues for Loyola Chicago as they make their way to the Final Four. It's all good. Oh, and the NBA is still kicking. And we're heading down to the final few games before we start talking NBA playoffs. It is basketball utopia round here. Oh, yeah, and the women's NCAA basketball tournament is going down. It's just all lovely, man. So let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, 50 grand NBA aficionado, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my brother from another mother, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. I'm sure you were not missing me when I was dealing with another winter storm. What is that, like 3 in 2 weeks?
You can have all of that, man. I'm not about that life at all. I'm definitely enjoying my lovely weather down here.
Just when I was feeling
Florida.
charitable, bro. Just when I was feeling charitable.
Well, and like I said, you can go and stick with that. But, I got love for the Northeast. My mom's, everybody's still out there. Hopefully things clear up for you guys sooner than later. You can truly enjoy the spring season, enjoy all this great basketball that's taking place as well. But as always, salute to all the fans listeners of NBA Baseline. It's going to be a great show, a lot of fun I think we're going to have on this episode as well. And I think we can't wait to hear some of the feedback we get after this one, man. It's going to be it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, definitely, man. In a few moments, we got our man, and we always love bringing him on whenever we get the opportunity. Our other brother from another mother, our man Jabari Davis. He covers all things Los Angeles Lakers. He's going to help us kind of break down, what's the future looking like for the Lakers as we start ending this regular season. This team has definitely come on and it's now raised a lot of question marks about how soon the Laker dynasty can resurrect itself from the ashes. And then later on in the drop, we talk about some statistical surprises, some statistical anomalies. Certain players doing certain things that we just didn't expect them to be doing in the course of an NBA season. So you definitely want to check out that. And of course, we got to cover it coast to coast where we give you the butter goods and discuss the things that are happening wire to wire in the association. Once again, get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. We're available on all the major platforms. You know how we roll and you know where we're at. So we always encourage you. Download any of those platforms. Allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things happening in the association. You know how we do and you know how we roll. It's time now for the breakdown.
Time to break it down.
To the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cali Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. This week with us to talk that purple and gold. We got our man. It's been a while since we had him on our show, but when he gives us the goods, he gives us the butter goods. Our man, Jabari Davis. He talks all things NBA. You can always catch him on Twitter at Jabari Davis NBA. Jabari, man, talk to me. What's good? How's that California sunshine treating you?
Well, it was treating me real. For one, let me thank you, Warren and Cal for having me on. But no, it was treating me really well. But except for the fact that I just moved out to Tucson not too long ago. So
how's that cactus going?
It's about the same. To be honest with you, the weather's about the same. But you're right. There's a whole lot of cactus or cacti, whichever you prefer.
All right, so let's get right into the juxtaposition of this. Right, clearly, it wasn't that the Lakers castigated you out to Tucson. Given what has been happening with the Los Angeles Lakers, but one would have to imagine, especially after this season, and the talent that they do have on this roster, what's the deal? What is the direction of the purple and gold moving forward beyond the 2018 season or 2017-2018 season? So Jabari, what's the tone like right now? Is there a lot of positivity brewing? Is there a lot of excitement that's going on out there, given from what you've seen so far through the course of this season, and ultimately what the organization and this team is going to have to do once this season ends? It's going to start giving people that feeling that the Lakers should be counted as one of those teams to watch for the following season.
To be honest, you kind of hit it on the head with positivity, but it's really optimism. Because look, Lakers fans are always going to be Lakers fans. They're always going to be there, through thick and thin. But the reality is, over the last 4 or 5 years, there just wasn't much to be optimistic about. Of course, it's been building over the last few drafts, and folks ended up, saying that they were happy about the players. But right now, this is kind of the first time in a long time that there's a true feeling of optimism. Now, not only is that because of the talent that they have out there on the court, but obviously, and I'm sure you guys have been discussing this all year. Part of that goes into, well, what do they do this summer? What can they get done this summer? For me personally, it's a matter of the players that they have right now are exciting enough, but if they end up bringing in one big guy or two big guys or whatever combination of additional talent they bring in, it's just there's just a lot of room for optimism, and it's a good thing to see because nobody likes whiny Lakers fans.
Especially not us being Celtics guys ourselves. So it's always great that we have this rapport that with you, Jabari, because again you are
fix your face when you say that though, Shaw. Fix your face when you say that.
No, but I mean Jabari keeps it 100. He's not a disillusioned fan. He's not a fan at all, really. At the end of the day, he's a respected journalist, and that's why we bring him on to talk the purple and gold, as you alluded to. So I want to kind of get into your opinion though when comparing some players on this roster. So we'll get to Lonzo and all that other stuff like that a little bit later on, but in terms of players who've had bounce back years, I think the Lakers definitely have two of those guys in terms of Brandon Ingram and Julius Randle. Which one of those players, now again, obviously they play different positions and probably have different futures with this roster as well too, but which one of those players to you have had the better overall season?
Well, just given the fact that Julius has been there throughout, if I'm not mistaken, he's one of the only guys that's played, if not all the games, in the absolute majority of the games. It's probably Julius, but that's not a slight in any way to what Brandon has done. Both of them have had great seasons. The thing of it is with Brandon, and I'll take him first. We can call it a bounce back season, but for those of us that actually watched all of their games, and I'm not expecting anybody to if you're not a fan or covering the Lakers last year, I wouldn't expect anybody to actively watch all 82 games from a team that won only 25-26. But if you were actively watching, he showed a lot of signs last year. It didn't always come out in the box score, and it didn't always look great at certain spots, but he showed a lot of potential. It was just a matter of, again, he was just young, very thin, and obviously he's still very thin, but very thin, just not physically prepared to play at this level, but it was there. And what this year did for me with him, because I was the one that was, I sounded foolish to a lot of people because I was saying, hey, look, last year, I think this guy has the potential to be one of the top, five, all around type guys in the league. I'm not talking about best players, but I mean like the all around, kind of gives it to you on both ends and can do a little bit of everything out there within the next 5 years. So what it does for me is it kind of validates that thought. I'm not saying it shows that it's a guarantee, but it validates that thought because he has shown a tremendous amount of growth and a tremendous amount of progress in just year two. And look, the guy's only 20 years old. So, but for Julius, on the other hand, what it really did for me is I had the question of, can he really be a starter on a good team? You know what I mean? And I'm not necessarily saying that the Lakers are good yet, but they're pretty good and they're getting there. And I think Julius has really solidified that in the sense of, yes, are there still holes in his game? Of course. But hey, look, I don't expect everybody to be a complete player or the player they're ultimately going to be at, in just year 3 or 4. So for both of those guys, this has been a fantastic year. They've shown a lot of, they've both shown a lot of progress. They've both shown a lot of, personal, physical growth, but as well as, to their all around game. And it's just been great to see. But, so I guess that was a very long winded way to say Randall's been the guy, but Ingram has shown me, a tremendous amount as well.
With that said, right? Randall is probably the guy that's not going to be here moving forward. Especially if the Lakers are going to make these major moves that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later on as well too. But of those guys, so now let's take this next tier of players, right? Because you have Isaiah Thomas. We're not sure about what his status is now. As we record, is dealing with another hip issue, and obviously Randall and some of the older guys are going to be off this roster. Do you want to see guys like Thomas and Randall back on this team, or do you really feel like they need to move ahead to try to make a next move?
Well, wait. With Julius Randle?
With Randall and Thomas, do you see those guys as part of the future, or do they both need to go in order to try to move ahead in general?
I think it really depends, and that's kind of the nice thing about having the options that they've got now. It depends. If ultimately you have a chance to bring in a LeBron James or two other incredible names, well then you have to make the determination at that point. Is this do I want player X for the next 5 years more than I would want Julius Randle for the next 5 years? So for the Randle perspective, I think you kind of play that by ear. Obviously, someone's going to offer him money come July 1st. So you're probably only going to have 72 hours in order to make that determination. I look at IT a little bit differently. To be honest with you, I feel for him. I think that no disrespect. I think he got it. I'm not saying Boston did him wrong, but the results of it, he ended up having kind of a raw deal with how that all played out. And I want him to get paid. But if I'm the Lakers, that's not a player that I'm looking to. I'm not. That's not a player I'm looking to hitch my wagon to moving forward. Again, no disrespect to him because I really, look, me, I'm always like, hey, get paid, get your money, and I hope, I want the players to get the most out of everything. Especially, look, he's a 5'9" guy. I feel for him, and like obviously we know the story. But no, I don't. If I'm the Lakers, that is not the type of player that I look to, like I said, hitch my wagon to moving forward.
Jabari, I want to touch on what we're speaking about here with regards to Brandon Ingram and with Julius Randle. With Brandon Ingram, they drafted. He's a high draft pick, lottery draft pick. They treat this kid like with kid gloves, man. And then with Julius Randle, it's almost like he has to earn his keep, and he's a lottery draft pick as well too. And I look at how other organizations, they treat some of their draft picks over in recent years like a bastard child. And maybe at the end of it, it meant something because now you could kind of see the core, like guys like Jahlil Okafor, the way that he was treated. And now suddenly you have this core or this nucleus of Embiid, Simmons, and Covington. And I'm just wondering, is that what we're talking about with the Los Angeles Lakers? Because they've amassed some talented individuals. I'm just having a hard time trying to figure out if they can cohesively come together and build on us identifying the chemistry of the new Showtime or whatever we're trying to label this youth movement that the Los Angeles Lakers represent.
No, I definitely know where you're coming from. Yeah, see, this is the thing with Randall. I don't know that they expected him to be quite as effective. And and some would say that's a good problem to have because he came out and he balled. Of course you have the criticisms like, oh well, it's a contract year. That's not really the case with Julius Randle. There's been a steady progression, but last year coming off the off season where I think he cut like 10% body fat and he just came in with an incredible physically looking great, but just with the right mindset. So maybe it could be a matter of when they went into the year, they didn't necessarily know. They I'm sure they had hopes that he could look like this, but it doesn't seem to me, at least how they were talking at the beginning of the season, like they recognized or realized how good Julius was going to be. And it may be a simple thing as he didn't, maybe Julius didn't even know, and now you kind of have to reassess as you go. But to be more direct, I think that they are still continuing to look for guys that can play interchangeable, that can be interchangeable, that can do multiple things out there. Not necessarily solely looking for specialists like like the NBA of yesteryear, where you had to have a big that did this, and you had to have a power forward that did, you know what I mean? Right. So, in my honest opinion, it's they're probably continuing to assess just where things might go with Randall in the event that they strike out or in the event that they ultimately just decide like, hey, he's going to be one of the mainstays here. But look, as much as I love these young kids, as much as I think like it would be great to see what it would look like if you kept them together over the next couple of years. Look, Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka, they're not there to hit singles. They're not here. They're not there to hit doubles. Now they'll take them because obviously you can generate. And I'm using the baseball analogy. You can generate runs. With a lot of singles and doubles and things of that nature. They're out there trying to hit home runs.
Yeah, and this summer, chicks dig the long ball, especially in Los Angeles.
There it is. There it is. Again, Magic Johnson is not in that position to simply wait it out. Now it may end up being that he has to, but that's not the plan. They are, look, no matter what they say down the stretch, and because everybody at the end of the year, feels all good, and like you do the exit interviews, and everybody feels great about it. They are going to try their darndest, and I edited myself. They're going to try their darndest to go out there and get some of those big name guys. It just so happens that those types of players, like the LeBron James, like the Paul George, can also do a lot of things on the court.
What I want to talk about, and it's gonna kind of get away from the Julius Randle topic a little bit here too, but it goes back to the coaching. In a lot of ways too. So this is a roster that has had a very interesting year where they've been all right, like just below 500 ball. I think start the game in the first 11, 12 games, and they went on a downward stretch. Then in the middle of the season, they were really playing really good basketball for a little while. And again, they're not going to be a 500 basketball team, but they're going to be a lot better than I think a lot of people predicted. A lot of that has to do with the defensive side of the basketball. Despite a team that is now first in pace in terms of pushing the basketball on a regular basis. But Luke Walton, he made guys like Julius Randle earn their minutes. And if I'm Randle, I know he had to be hot, understanding that Kyle Kuzma came in here and kind of supplanted him, was taking his minutes. And it wasn't until Brook Lopez really went down with his injury where they started playing Randle at the 5, almost out of necessity, that Randle started to really take off. Can you talk a little bit about what your perception is and what Lakers' perception is of the job that Luke Walton has done and his rapport with the players thus far this season?
Well, I mean, obviously, this is just my opinion, but I would have to imagine that they've been very pleased with the job that he's done over these last couple of years, and in particular, this season. And here's the reason why. Part of it is what you just said about instilling a defensive mindset. Getting guys to accept roles, getting guys to earn their spot. But also part of it is this has not been a very easy situation. You've got a couple older guys, that are trying to play understandably for their next contract. You've got a bunch of young guys that are just trying to get their legs up, beneath them. They're still out there. There are times when anytime you have a lot of young guys on the court, it looks like they're running around like baby horses out there. Just don't quite have their footing yet. So yeah, when you're assessing what Luke Walton and they've done, well, actually, here's another a better way of saying it. I went into the year. I actually did a piece for Silver Screen and Roll. Shout out to those guys, and I appreciate them, giving me the platform. Where I said the biggest questions are going to be: can he get guys to accept roles? Can he mold and develop guys into leaders? And can he instill a defensive mentality? Because the Lakers, for the last 5 years or 5 or 6 years prior to this, hadn't been anywhere. I don't even think they were anywhere in the top 20. From a defensive efficiency, standpoint. And the fact that at one point they were top 10, I think they're hovering right around, somewhere in the low teens right around now. The fact that he was able to do that with this young team, with all of these new pieces and parts. Keep in mind, Julius Randle in year 4 is now the longest tenured Laker. It's currently the longest tenured Laker. The fact that he was able to do that, and I honestly believe that a ton of props have to go to Luke Walton and that staff that he's put, that they've put around him.
Let me pick at the brain of Jabari Davis, the GM, for a moment. Where's your confidence level as it relates to Luke Walton, his coaching staff, and the Los Angeles Lakers moving forward in comparison to what we have seen with the recent, opinions that have been thrown out there about the future of Luke Walton under Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka?
My honest answer is what I actually said to Jameson, and I know you guys know Jameson. I said this just yesterday. I sent him a text and said, "Hey, they might just have a real one." Now, look, I'm not jumping the gun, but from everything that I've seen, from the way that he handles, how he handled the roster, how he handled the difficult circumstances that I just kind of laid out, how he transitioned, how he transitioned a team that was solely interested in offense when it wasn't even that great of an offensive team, and to be able to play defense and play together and play things, quote unquote, the right way, at least according to him. I can't imagine them being anything but ecstatic about what could be moving forward. He's still young. Luke Walton, look, this is only year 2 for him. So we'll see if he can also take that next step. Whenever we're evaluating players, we always talk about like, okay, watching their progression, seeing them take the next step. Well, the same has to be done for coaches, especially young coaches, just a couple years from playing themselves. So from what I've seen, if I'm the GM, if I'm Magic Johnson, I'm very pleased with what I've got.
So moving forward now, again, going back a little bit to the young talent. Okay. What is the overall perception of both the two rookies on the roster that are getting the majority of the minutes in terms of Lonzo Ball and Kyle Kuzma? Yes, we know Ball came in with all the hype, et cetera, his dad, blah, blah, blah. That's all fine and good. But just let's just keep it basketball. Is this roster, this team, and then again, your sense of kind of the teammates themselves, are they good with these two young guys and having them a part of the future? Because I'll just give my take really quick. I think initially coming in, and maybe more so in the case of Kuzma because he came out of nowhere, where he was kind of taking some guys' minutes. Like I got the impression that maybe not all the guys on the roster were about that. But he's really earned his minutes and kind of done his thing. But just kind of give me your impression as a guy who's been watching the team all season long.
No, that's a great point, and you know what? That would be a natural, that would be a natural feeling, especially for athletes. These are professional athletes; they're competitors. Like a guy like Julius Randle, as you mentioned earlier. He's been the guy all his life. He was Mister. He was great in high school. He was very good in college. He came in with expectations, and then all of a sudden, you see a guy like Kyle Kuzma just taking your minutes. That's going to bother you, regardless of what the reasons are, regardless of whether the coach is trying to teach you a lesson or trying to extract something out of you. That is going to bother you. But uh, since things have kind of regulated themselves, I haven't seen any issues whatsoever in terms of a chemistry, from a chemistry standpoint between the young guys. It's interesting. I think Lonzo was hurt by the fact that all the hype, was around him coming in. Just like I think Kyle Kuzma benefited from the fact that he was kind of an unknown. And then somewhere along the line, Lonzo, picked up his play and continued to play better and continue to play better and continue to show all of the different things all around. Now, look, the shooting, we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. That's going to be a work in progress. But in terms of actual on the court, all around game, Lonzo has been phenomenal. He has. Your scoring, shooting, that's a question. But from passing to playmaking to rebounding to playing the passing lane to actually defending on ball, because all of us know there aren't that many real on ball defenders at that point guard position these days, and he can do it. This is not hyperbole. The kid can play some defense. So from an on the court perspective, I think he's kind of shown, hey, look, we might need to pump the brakes in terms of talking about him as a superstar, but in terms of being a very good player, the potential is there, and we'll see what type of adjustments he makes from a scoring standpoint in order to determine, moving forward, to determine whether he's going to get to that superstar level. But in terms of, but he's fine. Kyle Kuzma, again, came out of nowhere. I saw him at Utah, but this isn't the guy that I saw. You know what I mean? Maybe that's more of an indictment of college basketball. But I won't upset your listeners that like college ball. But no, he hit the ground running. He showed that he has shown that he's got a tremendous offensive skill set. And really, the question with him, and I don't know if you guys saw this, at one point Luke started to sit him because he wasn't paying nearly the same attention or attention to detail on the defensive end. But he's also picked that side of it up as well. So look, with those two young guys, if I'm the Lakers, unless there's a situation, and look, this is a total, out of left field, unless there's a situation where, say, for instance, the Pelicans come to you this offseason and say, hey, look, I want those, I want all of those, for a guy like Anthony Davis, I think you're very good moving forward with those two guys. Being that there's still plenty of room for improvement with each of them, and they seem to have the right mentality and approach to improving individually as well as as team players.
Jabari Davis joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast. Be sure to catch him on Twitter at Jabari Davis NBA. A couple of questions from my end here, Jabari. If there was a player that you look on this roster, this Lakers roster, and you had to inject the Mamba venom in him, who would you want to see get that venom? Based on what you've seen so far through the course of the season?
See, I won't lie to you. I try to avoid, I'm the one guy, maybe, that try to kind of covers the Lakers and talks about the Lakers. I try to avoid, even doing that. But okay, I'll play along. If there's somebody, I'd want it to be, well, can I inject the Mamba's footwork and ability?
It's venom, man. I didn't say build a Lakers cyborg. I just, I mean, if there's somebody that you want, that game clutch ruthlessness, that I'm gonna put this team on my shoulders, that you want injected in that from the talent that you've seen so far this season, who would you like to see injected with that venom to give them, to take them, beyond what they already have shown you this year?
Okay, well, you're going to laugh at me because I think Kyle Kuzma already has some of that in him. So I'll go ahead and inject that into Zoe. Even though I think Zoe is a very confident player, even though I think he's very self-assured, there are very clear times out there where he is not attacking because he either doesn't want to get fouled or
he just doesn't want to get screamed on by Stephen A. Smith. I completely understand. Yes, I mean nobody wants to get screamed. The guy screams from Connecticut, and somehow it resonates all the way to Los Angeles.
It's not even over the air. You just hear him. You open your window, it's here. Yeah, no, I hear. No, yeah, no, but no, I honestly think, yeah, I'm not trying to put dubs on Kyle Kuzma, but he already has some of that in him. In the sense of he's not afraid of the moment. He is not afraid of the moment at all, and he's coming at you whether he's 4 for 16 or 10 for 16 or whatever the case may be.
So I think those are great points, and I'm gonna, almost wrap mine up here as well too. Here, Jabari, with some of these young guys or overall players on this roster, all right. And again, we kind of touched on it some a little bit, but let's take a look at that middle tier right now. Okay, Josh Hart, played well for this team and the Spurs this year as well too. KCP, even as a veteran guy, obviously was there to try to soak up some of the salary. Was on a 1-year deal, may or may not be back. Brook Lopez as well. Of those guys who just kind of did a little bit here and there, which one of those were you most impressed with their overall contribution?
Brook has, been kind of what I expected. He's been very good, for this last stretch. But, he had some ups and downs, and part of that was just as simple as he was kind of falling out of the rotation because Luke was trying to, go in a different direction, and then he was also hurt, for a certain stretch of games as well. I think it was his ankle, if I'm not mistaken. But no, Josh Hart has been, also, we've been talking about Kyle Kuzma, and I say we, I mean the general basketball discussion when it comes to these Lakers rookies. But Josh Hart has absolutely been a surprise for me. And, look, he was solid. He was solid at Nova. So he came out. It wasn't as though we didn't know that he could play. But he, kind of like in the sense of I didn't know that it was going to quite translate it, quite as well. It really disappointed me when he got hurt because I would have loved to see him kind of finish the season out and carry that momentum in. Now he could still come back. They've talked about he may come back over the next week or so. But no, he in terms of biggest surprise, other than obviously outside of Kyle Kuzma, I think Josh Hart has been a very what it actually showed me was this Lakers scouting and development department has been on point these last couple of years.
Good point.
Because as much as look, the going joke has been, hey, the Lakers can't get right. If you look at the work that they've done in the draft over the last couple of years, because this is obviously even prior to this current regime of with Magic and Pelinka at the helm, but the scouting department has been the same. Those guys have done a phenomenal job, and you know what? Kudos to them for getting another at the very least solid NBA player in Josh Hart.
He is the man. He covers that purple and gold no matter where he's at. He could be in Los Angeles, Tucson, Arizona, or somewhere out in Maine. That's our man, Jabari Davis. Jabari, man, appreciate you just giving us that insight. I'm just curious if the Lakers turn around next year and give you a 55-win season, will you be moving back to LA?
Look, my heart's always in LA. It's where I grew up. I'll never be able to say, hey, that'll never happen. But right now, my family, my folks are out here. They're getting older. I realize they're getting older because I recognize how old I'm getting. So for now, so for now, this is where I'm at. But look, if they win 55 and they start getting serious again, at the very least, I'll be taking flights out there to catch games live.
Well, we look forward to bringing you back on there so you can keep us abreast of when your moving plans should start taking place or when your flight plans should start changing up for this upcoming season, man.
Thank you guys very much. Always great to talk to you guys about basketball. Really appreciate the time.
Most definitely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. This week on The Drop, statistical surprises. What do we mean by that? Through the course of the year, we often take a more lackadaisical approach, I presume is probably the best word to use, when we assume that most of the statistical categories are going to be occupied by the top 3-4 players in the game of basketball. LeBron James is the Russell Westbrooks, the Steph Currys, the James Hardens, obviously, Durant, those guys. They're going to occupy those statistics that we love to kind of rub the noses of everyone else and saying that's why my team is number one and so forth and so on. But, not everything is what the statistics read, man, because underneath it all, there's some players out there that have actually been balling out and have assumed some statistical categories that we don't often translate as being a part of their game or who we are or who they are, or who we think that they should be as far as stars or part of the NBA altogether. And Shaw, I know you came across a few people that have kind of caught your eye as far as giving you a statistical wake up call on their game as it translates in the NBA.
Yeah, I do, and I'll try to run through some. And I'll say this first and foremost to the fans, listeners of our show. I may be ignorant to some degree. I've been watching basketball all season long, but it just really, really hit me and occurred to me that LeBron James was second in the league in assists this year at 9.1 as we record this show. Again, it's his best assist year ever, without question. But the fact that in his 15th year now that he's averaging the second best assist total in the NBA to date is that's mind boggling. And then even when you look further down that list in the kind of top 10, even top 12, there's guys in there like did you see Ben Simmons being a top 5 assist guy? I mean, Ben Simmons as a rookie, we knew he was going to come here and dish the rock, but even that, like that's a little bit
He's on
shocking.
pace to throw 600 assists for a rookie. And
Like we
it's just
you
I wasn't even
couldn't have
expecting
seen
that.
that.
Yeah, I wasn't
You,
even expecting. In other realms, if he was in another generation, so to speak, we would be talking about him as an MVP automatically with, just that kind of play that he brings to the table alone. Forget the freakish height and ball handling. So the fact that this guy could eclipse close to 600 assists, he would be basically doing, what we often tout guards like Chris Paul, Rajon Rondo, and other point guards that are out there, as that's their primary role and responsibility. Oh, and he still gives you 17, 18 points. It's remarkable.
yeah, I mean, if I think if you would have taken a hedge on a bet in terms of which rookie would have had more assists this year, most people would have said Lonzo Ball, but Simmons wouldn't be that far behind. You probably would have put Lonzo at maybe 7-ish, maybe 6, 8, something like that. But he's not. He's not there. It's Ben Simmons at a solid 8 assists per game that have me kind of just like wow. And even you just mentioned Rondo. I mean, he's kind of had a quiet year in New Orleans, but he's still in the top 10 in assists. And then our guy out of Brooklyn, Spencer Dinwiddie, has had a great season. Yes, he slowed down a little bit since D'Angelo Russell's kind of gotten his legs back a little bit. But since Spencer Dinwiddie down at number 10 in assists per game at 6.7, and those are some things that if you were going into this NBA season, you wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, I saw that happening, man. Not at all. What about you?
Well, for me, I think what really surprises me is the guys that are, in the top 10 in 3-point field goals made. And
Mm.
the reason why I say this is because it often is occupied by guys like Steph Curry, by Klay Thompson. Um, the fact that James Harden, he's always kind of been up there, which really tells you how much he's worked on his outside shooting. That he is, one of the top people as far as 3-point field goals made this year stands out to me. But Paul George, Kemba Walker, Kyle Lowry have made more 3-point field goals than Steph Curry. Now, Steph Curry has obviously, been injured, but Steph Curry doesn't shoot the three ball with the at the same veracity as he had been, the last few seasons. Clearly, it's because he's now got another weapon with Kevin Durant on this team, and you also have another sharpshooter in Klay Thompson. But when I think about 3-point field goals shooters and those that make them, Kemba Walker and Kyle Lowry are not people that jump up on my radar. And so it really it surprises me that when we talk about teams like the Toronto Raptors and ultimately what it's going to take for them to get past teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics, if Kyle Lowry is going to be that kind of dude that's going to get you 200 plus 3-point field goals made in the course of a season, and he actually executes that in the playoffs, that just makes that backcourt that much more lethal. And that's exactly what we've been saying that the Toronto Raptors and Dwayne Casey needs for them to get past a LeBron James-led basketball team. Their backcourt of him and DeRozan have to be that combination that makes it virtually impossible for just one LeBron James to be on that basketball court to stop that combo.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Lowry. I mean, I've been watching him. He has added that shot over the years, but again, I think more so when you mentioned a guy like Kemba Walker who came into the league as a non-shooter. To see him up there now. Again, all of this is aided by Curry and Clay being injured, and Curry more so for a good portion of the year. But then even take a further look at that list, even going down. Wayne Ellington having a career year in Miami. As we record seventh. Tied with Damian Lillard, ahead of guys like Eric Gordon and even Bradley Beal. Wayne Ellington, you know what I mean? A role player in Miami. So,
Right.
There's a lot of crazy things going on at that 3-point line.
But to your point, Shaw, I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The guys that are occupying this list, it's not so much that they're even starters. It's that their game of how we remember them, what they did when they first came into the league, and even now as veterans. This is not a statistic that just suddenly jumps up on the radar. There has to be an evolution to their mindset, the way that they shoot the basketball. And so to me, it just stands out more than anything. Like guys like Kemba Walker, maybe even Paul George, I can understand that. We can make that argument. But Kyle Lowry, I mean, Kyle Lowry's game has always been bully ball, right? So now you're asking a guy who's used to playing bully ball to turn around and just shoot 3-point shots in other people's eyelids. That just it's hard to make that kind of translation. Guys like Damian Lillard and Eric Gordon, I would expect to be a part of that top 5. And the fact that they're not just tells me that some of these other guys clearly recognize where their game needs to trend towards if they're going to make their teams better.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I'll transition, but kind of stay in the same mold a little bit too. Looking, I mean, this is a little bit further down the list, but not in terms of field goals, 3 pointers made, but in terms of 3-point field goal percentage. You have Karl Anthony Towns and Al Horford at 10 and 11 respectively. As we record the show at 42 and 42.7 or 42.7 and 42.6 for Horford. And then in the case of Towns, he's a top 5 rebounder as well too. So this is a guy whose talent, I mean, is really just taking off to that next level in terms of really being a stretch 5, a guy who's still going down there and getting double-digit rebounds per game while shooting almost 43% from the 3-point line. To me, that's another statistical anomaly. It's just like, damn, that kind of really opens my eyes when I'm looking at kind of what's going on in the NBA this season.
You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. We are in the drop. And our subject this week is statistical surprises. Which players have actually kind of came out of nowhere and have established themselves in certain categories, NBA statistical categories, that we ought not think of them when they do what they do. Look, did you ever think in your mind, Shaw, that we'd be talking about Andre Drummond being the most dominant rebounder in the NBA? I mean, I know. I listen. You know how I love some Andre Drummond. I've always said it, and I keep saying it. This kid's a man child. Um, but the fact that he has established himself as one of the premier rebounders in a league where you've got guys like DeAndre Jordan, you've got guys like Anthony Davis, Boogie Cousins, obviously, minus the injury. It's hard to imagine the statistical numbers that Andre Drummond has been able to give, not just the Detroit Pistons, but just the NBA in general from an offensive and defensive perspective. The guy's just straight blazing. It's a shame because his team ain't even going to make the playoffs. And ultimately, that is one dude that I would love to see causing havoc during playoff time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one of our great listeners on Twitter, Boxy2009, and follow him on Twitter. He also pointed out in the case of DeAndre Jordan specifically, not just from a rebounding standpoint, but what he's done from the free throw standpoint, raising his free throw percentage from 38% last year to 61% this year, and then to your point, from 48% to 61% in DeAndre Jordan's case, and 38% to 60% in the case of Andre Drummond, the guy you were just talking about. So those two guys really, like, and truly rebounding guys who were always scared in essence to get fouled. And they stepped up their games on the other side of the basketball. Yes, they've always been good rebounders, but the fact that they're not good free throw shooters, but they're 100 times better than they were last season. Both of those guys, while still maintaining the great rebounding that they've been able to display over the course of their careers.
There's one other category that I think really jumps out at me, and it's one where I feel like we have to keep a close eye on this because I often say that it usually speaks volumes about where the mindset is of a basketball player, especially when he's making quote unquote his MVP run. We talk about how Steph Curry really established himself, and I remember, when we had our girl, Benny Bonsu, and y'all were getting at me because the first year that Steph Curry was winning that MVP, it was supposed to be going to James Harden. And I've said, time and time again, sometimes it's not even just about what the kid is doing statistically, it's also what he's doing defensively. And we keep knocking, offensive players that they don't do enough defensively, that they should be given that kind of consideration. I look in the steals category, man, and James Harden's a top 10 in steals. And so that to me tells me something about his effort in the way that he is playing next to a guy like Chris Paul to still be able to maintain the numbers that he reflects as a offensive juggernaut. That he still has some defensive, just enough defensive principles, and I think it's part of the reason why we're now taking the Houston Rockets seriously as a team that could really be a threat to the Golden State Warriors, because there are elements to what we're now seeing in James Harden's game that's translating to one, not him not just only being deserving of being the MVP this year, but also closing up some holes that we thought would probably be exposed if he does play against an elite team like the Golden State Warriors. And that's that ability or propensity to play one-on-one defense when the pressure is on. He could actually be the X factor for the Houston Rockets and us having that conversation about them making an NBA Finals if this is what he's going to translate from the defensive side.
Well, D'Antoni really understood what they needed to improve on, and that's where guys like Chris Paul, PJ Tucker, Luke Richard, Maramute, all those guys have helped the team defense in general. And then it's just one of those things that's a natural progression when you're on your roster. You see other guys out there hustling and trying hard on that side. You, as a leader and an perennial MVP candidate, you kind of have to dig in on that side as well too. So I think Harden and the Rockets in general just understand what it's going to take for them to play championship level basketball, not just playoff basketball, not just second round basketball, championship level to potentially get to that next step. My final one, man, before we move on out of here, is like it's kind of in that same mode, and even talking about the Rockets a little bit. It's player efficiency. Clint Capella is 11th in the NBA in player efficiency, tied with his teammate Chris Paul. Then you look just a couple notches down. We have Enes Kanter in terms of player efficiency. So it makes you wonder, like, how is this stat being calculated overall? But Enes Kanter is 14th in the NBA at 24.4 in terms of player efficiency. But Clint Capella tied with Chris Paul at 24.6. Again, not enough is being said about the job Clint Capella has done in his role. And again, I know it's Victor Oladipo's award to lose in terms of the most improved player, but if Clint Capella doesn't rack up all your second place votes, then there's something wrong with the system at all.
I mean, look, Clint Capella leads in 2-point field goal percentage. He's clearly up there. He's even up there as far as um, defensive rating goes. So yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a close call regarding most improved. I might lean to the onto the side that Victor Oladipo has it, just simply because of his all-around play, offensively and defensively, because he leads the league in steals right now. Does it surprise you, Shaw, that when we look at some of these statistical anomalies, that the Minnesota Timberwolves really don't have anyone that are heads and shoulders, in the top 10 of a lot of these primary categories that we translate to whether or not a team is uber successful? Does it surprise you a little bit? Like, Karl Anthony Town leads the league with personal fouls, but I don't know whether or not that's supposed to mean anything when you actually break it down from an analytical perspective. But as I go through most of these statistical categories, man, there's nobody from the Timberwolves roster that jumps out. So I don't know if that says something more about how well-rounded this basketball team is, how maybe unselfish this basketball team is, or really they just love screwing with us in the numbers that we always try to throw out there when we try to make sense of this stuff.
Well, I mean, it's a tough call, I think, there, because Towns is scattered kind of all over the place. I mentioned him in the 3-point field goal percentage. He is actually ninth in player efficiency, and he's actually, I think, ninth in blocks per game right now as well, too. But when it comes to those points and assists and things of that nature, yeah, it's a little bit harder because they do share the ball, and they have a lot of good guys on that roster. And Jimmy Butler was really kind of taking over things until he got hurt. And I'm not really quite sure where he's at right now in terms of the points per game. I don't think he's fallen out of contention by not playing enough games. So, either way, I think this Timberwolves roster is very good overall, but you're right. They don't have anybody that's trailblazing it, so to speak, maybe at the very top, maybe top five of some of those lists, except for Towns. Again, he's fourth in rebounding. So again, Towns is having a very good year, but overall, this roster is pretty even, and Tom Thibodeau has done a great job in trying to make it happen. Now they need to get Butler back and see what they're actually going to be able to do once they make the playoffs, assuming they can stay and hang in there, because it's a little bit tight down there, that 7 and 8 spot.
Oh yeah, they're squeezing it very heavy, down to the wire, down to the wire. You're tuned to the Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. And this was The Drop.
Coast to coast.
Time now to go coast to coast discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right. Points of concern. Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry, both having to get one needing to get quote unquote minimally invasive surgery on his knee. I don't care what you tell me. That doesn't sound good. And then Steph Curry sprains his MCL, expected to be gone for like another 3 weeks. Man, I'm just hoping that these guys are back for the playoffs. The playoffs ain't going to be right, man, if the two most exciting point guards next to Russell Westbrook and James Harden are not on these rosters, man. It's just going to be heartbreaking.
Yeah. Very, very concerning. Only reason this isn't a drop topic for us is because we kind of discussed this last week in terms of both of these rosters needing those guys to really be healthy. Golden State definitely more equipped to Curry being out for a little bit of time, while Boston is in a world of trouble. Terry Rozier is going to have to step up in a major way, and he has been, and playing great basketball. But even now, it comes down to guys like Shane Larkin as well too, and then even from the front court position, guys like Greg Monroe, can they help out? Golden State, I think they'll be fine, definitely in the first round. But Boston, I think if any of those teams in the bottom, they're probably licking their chops, looking at the opportunity to play Boston without Kyrie Irving in the first round of playoffs.
Definitely. Out in Cleveland, welcome back, Kevin Love, man. Needs to show the Cavaliers some love right now, man. They need a hug. Unfortunately, Tyronn Lue, though, as Kevin Love comes back, he steps away due to health concerns. Listen, this is the ongoing drama, the ongoing storyline with the Cleveland Cavaliers, Shaw. But do we have a happy ending, out of all of the tumultuousness that's happened with this team?
I think so, and again, I tweeted the other day, I think Kevin Love's career is going to be a 30 for 30 someday. People down on him all season long. Then he goes down and gets hurt, and Isaiah Thomas calling him out. Now he comes back, and they were skidding a little bit, and now they're like, oh, we can't wait for Love to come back. He's going to help save our season and help us from slipping down, past out of the first round of home court advantage in the playoffs. Again, Kevin Love it's just a quirky relationship the social media has and the fans have with him, but he's a very good basketball player, all-star level talent, and Cleveland definitely needs him to be successful.
Finally, Shaw, out in NOLA, and also in California, DeMarcus Cousins and Matt Barnes. If people were not aware of the situation that happened to Stephon Clark, the young man who was killed by police officers out in Sacramento, they've offered to pay the funeral services for Stephon Clark and his family. Just again, another point of why athletes are more than just guys that just go out there and play basketball. Their minds are still embedded in the consciousness of communities, and I think no bigger sign or showage of support takes precedent when guys like these step in and help a family who's just lost a loved one due to these unnerving circumstances. It just speaks volumes about how great guys like DeMarcus Cousins and Matt Barnes are, not just to the league, but just to our society in general.
Yeah, and this is a common thing around the league in terms of just nice gestures, and sometimes that get published and sometimes they don't. But Cousins was very integrated to the Sacramento community. Matt Barnes jumping in on this thing as well too to kind of help with that family. But this is the type of stuff that we love here at the Baseline NBA podcast, showing support to the great community players that exist in our league, because that's what really is important. It's real life over basketball every time. I say that 100 times out of 100. So my hat's off and salute to DeMarcus Cousins and Matt Barnes for going ahead and making this gesture.
And I'm going to say this as well too, because I don't want to sound petty, but I hope I do sound disrespectful. I don't expect what we just talked about to be spoken on shows like the Laura Ingraham show, because she could be the same person that tells athletes like LeBron James to just shut up and play basketball. But I never hear of any one of these shows mention things like this take place when athletes do good for the community. And I sure as hell don't see Laura Ingraham or any one of her colleagues stepping up to help pay for the funeral services when one of our youth are slain by these unnerving circumstances and trends that tend to still happen in our society. So this is one of the reasons why I give love and I applaud guys like Boogie Cousins and Matt Barnes. Think of whatever you want to think about them. They could be petty babies, spoiled brats, whatever. But these dudes step up when communities need them the most, and they show true to themselves when they do. And we respect them for that, especially here on the Baseline NBA podcast. This has been one hell of a show, Shaw. Wire to wire. We talked Lakers basketball, and neither one of us didn't want to hang ourselves at the end of it. We still wind up speaking about these great statistics that take place right now in what's been a really surprisingly fun NBA season so far. I mean, it's all good, baby. This is how we start spring off the right way.
Yeah, man, this was an amazing episode, I think, really, especially when we talked to, one of our friends, and, not just somebody who's covering the league, it's somebody who we connect with on a personal level, even outside of the podcast, and Jabari Davis. And, he's really tuned in and dialed into what's going on in Lakerland. And it was a great episode with him. Again, I had a lot of fun too, just kind of going through the statistical anomalies, at least to me, that I wasn't necessarily paying attention to acutely in the way that maybe I should as an analyst. But I think it was a lot of great conversation. And again, shout out to our guy Box Seat 2009 on Twitter for helping us out, with the show topic a little bit too. And also shout out Box Seat because he also bought a Baseline NBA t-shirt, off our TeePublic store, man. So we're definitely out there in the community doing our thing, and we're getting a lot of great support and love from our fans out there. Brother.
And Shaw, I know that we haven't really been, self-promoting the shameless promotion, as I like to call it. We don't normally get to do that, but you know what? Since our man Box Seat 2009 is showing us the way, maybe people who listen to our show need to get the info on where they can go to cop some of that fly Baseline NBA podcast gear, brother.
You know how it is, man. Definitely, check out TeePublic. That's TeePublic.com. And you can just search the Shaw Sports Store on there. So that's me. Or you can just search the Baseline and our shirt pops up. You get it in any color: black, blue, purple, teal, yellow, gray, orange. It doesn't matter. Go ahead and rock our faces. Rock your favorite NBA podcast in the TeePublic store. All proceeds go back into our resources here to kind of make sure that we're giving you a free show on a regular basis. And you can get more than shirts. You get hoodies. You can get onesies, you can get mugs, you get pillows. It's a great store. So make sure to go on TeePublic and search for the Baseline or search for Shaw Sports, and you'll find that apparel there, man.
All right, so you know where to go and you know how we roll, man. And as always, show us the love and support, and we're always welcome for comments and thoughts. Please get at us at NBA Baseline. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys, each and every single one of you, and we'll catch up with you next time.